So welcome again. So in continuation with the previous video on break-even analysis, the theoretical aspect of break-even analysis we have discussed. So in this lecture we will see how we can manipulate this break-even analysis with the help of some graphs, and this lecture I will be demonstrating how to lower down the break-even point so that the profits can be achieved at a much lower volume. So coming on to some of the implications of this, like if we are operating a business, what we try to achieve, what we strive to achieve is to achieve break-even point as early as possible. Okay, or we will always try to have lower number of quantities or lower break-even points to be achieved at lower number of quantities, so that greater region will be the region associated with the profit and less area or region associated with the loss. So the thing is how to do that. Now if we see the curves, what we have a fixed cost, we have a variable cost, and if we sum the two, we have the total cost. Fine. Now we have a total revenue, that is the amount of money generated by selling a particular item or product in a market. So the thing is, if we want to switch over from this point to this point, so one thing is that if we want to reduce the break-even point, then we require the slope of this line to be higher, or much steeper slope is required. So if in order to achieve much steeper slope, if we just move this line to this way, you see, instead of earlier we have a break-even point at Q1 quantities, now if we somehow shift this line this way, then the break-even point will change to Q2, and of course Q2 is less than Q1. That means now if we have the total revenue line like this, we will be achieving the break-even point at much lower quantities. So the thing is, a very simple thing is that this we can achieve if we increase the selling price of that particular item. So earlier, if we plot, say for example, this is the total revenue function when we are selling the same unit for ₹2, and if we just increase the selling price by ₹1, this line will shift like this, and now in this case we will be having a break-even point at Q2 quantities instead of Q1. So this is one way by which we can reduce the break-even point. Another method of reducing or lowering down of break-even point is to move the total cost line, or reducing the slope of the total cost line. So how this can be achieved, since this can be achieved only if we can reduce the fixed cost or we can reduce the variable cost. So again, if the total revenue lines remains the same and we work upon the total cost, or if we somehow reduce the variable cost or the fixed cost is generally what we have already incurred, so this can't be changed. So what we can change is just the variable cost associated with the production. If we just reduce the variable cost, then the slope of the total cost line will be lower as compared to the previous one, and in that case also we will be having a break-even point much earlier than what we are having when the total cost line is like this. So there are two conditions. One is either we increase the selling price per unit, in that way we can achieve the break-even point much quickly, but of course that will affect the demand adversely, because we have seen that there is a relationship between price and demand. And the second way to reduce the break-even point is somehow to reduce the total cost, and this in turn can be done if we reduce the variable cost component in the total cost. So in that way we can reduce the break-even point, and once the break-even point is reduced, we will be having larger area associated with the profit, or larger region associated with the profit, and less region associated with the loss. Now there is again one term which is used in the context of break-even analysis, what we call as the margin of safety. So margin of safety represents the strength of a business. It enables a business to know what is the exact amount it has gained or lost, and whether they are over or below the break-even point. Simply, if I just show you this on this diagram. The safety of margin is nothing but it is where we are operating our business in terms of units sold subtracted, and if we subtract the break-even quantities from this quantity, this will give us the margin of safety. That is where we are operating in comparison to the break-even point. If we subtract this Q1 from Q2, Q1 are the quantities required at break-even point, and Q2 is where we are operating. So if we just subtract this Q1 from Q2, that is what we call as a margin of safety. A negative margin of safety simply indicates that we are operating the business in loss. So margin of safety, we can define it as current output minus break-even output. So this is in terms of the output. Although we can define it in terms of sales also, it is the actual sales minus, if we just project these lines on the y-axis, so margin of safety we can define as actual sales minus the break-even sales. In terms of percentage, we can define the margin of safety as current output minus break-even output divided by current output multiplied by 100. So in this way we can just define, in terms of percentage, we can define the margin of safety. So thus we have seen how we can manipulate the break-even point. So in these two lectures we have covered the theoretical aspect of break-even analysis, and we have seen the manipulation of the break-even point. In our next lecture we will be focusing some of the problems in which what we have discussed in these two lectures that will be used.